Can I ask if we have any apologies or substitutes today?
No apologies, convener.
Thank you. And can I ask if we've got any declarations of interest? No declarations? Okay, that's great. Thank you. We'll go on to item number 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. Do we approve the minutes?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Okay, the next item is item 4, the consultation on the National Care Service Scotland Bill. And we have a report by the Chief Executive. Would you like to present this bill, this paper, Margot?
Thanks, Councillor Whiteside. Yeah, happy to introduce it very briefly. It's the report bringing the National Care Service Scotland's bill stage 1 to you, really for an awareness. I mean, the bill was introduced to Parliament in June this year, and it provides for a Charter of Rights and Responsibilities for social care. The consultation has started, and specifically it covers a number of areas around a change in powers and responsibilities. So for social care, with a complaints and a redress process as listed in 3.1, a power to transfer accountability for a range of services, including adult social care and social work services, to Scottish ministers. That's subject to parliamentary approval, and the bill requires a further public consultation to be held in relation to children's and justice social work, and the results to be laid before Parliament alongside any regulation. So the report asks members to note the bill, to note the content and call for any views. We are presently putting together the response, and it asks you as members to give me permission, to enable me really to submit the report on the 2nd of September, or by the 2nd of September, which is the last date. Appendix A gives you a bit of an outline of the questions that are being asked in the consultation. And as I say, because of the timescale, we can't bring the response to you, but we will do it retrospectively. But just to ask that we do this in conjunction with the leaders, and you approve that today. Thanks, Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks very much, Margot, for the explanation. It's obviously a hugely complex area. The changes proposed are complex and not all entirely clear. Do we have any questions? No, I think that's a no. Okay, as the Chief Executive explained, we're asked to note and to authorise the Chief Executive to submit the response. Councillor Fairweather.
Yes, thanks, convener. I am deeply concerned about this. Obviously, the Chief Executive does have a problem. This has got to be in by, was it the 2nd of September? Really, I would have liked to have seen the response that the council was being would have been put or is going to put back. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem that that's going to happen. The response, if the Chief Executive can get that to elected members as quickly as possible, and I think I certainly would be suggesting that we discuss this at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Wan.
Aye, sorry, Councillor Whiteside. I thought you would have went to comments before for summarising there. We just did questions, but I do have a comment to make, and it's very similar to what Councillor Fairweather's saying. I've got a deep concern about this National Care Service idea, and the fact that there's a lot of questions still hasn't been basically answered, or any detail really being given to the council to allow us to know what kind of cuts it's going to mean for our budgets. Already damaging cuts we're seeing. Is this going to be more? What resources is the council going to have to still provide, if any? What accountability will the new care service really have? It just seems like another kind of central belt obsessed Edinburgh government's wild fantasy to me, and it's something that really hasn't been made clear exactly what's going to happen for the local authorities. And as Councillor Fairweather says, I really would have liked to have seen these given the council the full opportunity to see the answers that's been returned back. But due to short notice, I suppose we'll just really have to agree with it.
Thank you, Councillor Vaughan. We've got a couple more comments, but would the Chief Executive like to come in?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Whiteside. I probably wasn't clear enough there, actually. I will have the response completed, and it will be in consultation with yourself and Councillor Wan in terms of the response that we will give. So it's just to give a bit of assurance there. I don't think I added that properly when I was introducing it, so my apologies.
Thank you. That's reassuring. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Convener. It was just to provide some assurance that, you know, this has been taken very seriously in all sorts of forums, and also any individuals can complete a consultation response. It's all available on the Scottish Government website. I'm pleased that we are putting in a response, and I know that IGB's working on one too. They may be quite different, but I just wondered if Margot had heard if there might be an extension to that deadline, or is it definitively Friday this week? Thanks.
Through you, Chair. I haven't heard anything that's changing that date at this stage, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, continue to be concerned with regards to this. And also just the kind of the tight deadlines as well and timescales that everyone's working to on such a huge piece of work. I think we met to discuss that. Again, it was pretty tight in terms of timescales and the ability to put together a response. I would have quite liked to have seen that response as well, and been able to kind of chip into it.
Okay, thanks for your comments. I think we have to take comfort from the fact that we are just at stage 1 of the bill, but comments are noted. Is that every comment? Okay, are we agreed to note and authorise the Chief Executive to respond?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, the next report is item number 5, which is the elected members development strategy, and this sets out the plan for the development of elected members. Would Mrs Buchanan like to come in on this one?
Thank you, Convener. Just to explain, really, as you say, it's the elected members development strategy. We've always had quite robust and full training for elected members, and in terms of the strategy, we're just detailing that in effect, what's available, the roles and responsibilities of those involved on an officer perspective in relation to providing the training and supporting that, and also what the elected members are responsible in terms of their own development. There's provision that refers to access to development opportunities, explaining that clearly available to everyone, but taking cognizance of the fact that not all elected members are available at all times, and how the council officers will support that insofar as they can by making training available out of hours where possible, and also in terms of recording training. And the report also refers to the improvement service role in relation to training and what they can do. It then goes on to provide a high level details of the different types of training that are available, and the role of the Standards Commission in terms of training, and also the evaluation of the induction programme that's proposed. Happy to take any questions in terms of any aspects of the strategy, Convener.
Thanks very much, and it's reassuring, I'm sure, to members to know that there's going to be flexibility around the times and the methods they can access the training. Do we have any questions? No questions? Any comments? Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I mean, last term I found elected member development really helpful, and I did a lot of the improvement service opportunities as well. I found it really quite in depth, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't been on anything like that before to explore what's available when it comes in. I think it's, everyone can learn regardless of your age and stage, and I just think it's really important to enhance our knowledge and skills base as councillors. Thanks.
Councillor Bell. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, convener. I certainly welcome this report, and I would like to thank Jackie Buchanan. When she first came into council, one of the first things she did was start a training regime. Can I say, as leader, when I first came in, I also got all my group to undergo all aspects of council training, and we did that with the conveners and officers and directors, and that certainly helped a number of people who weren't aware of what was actually happening in the council or what did happen in the council. So yeah, I welcome the strategy that's moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, convener. Yes, I do welcome the strategy. I particularly welcome the recognition that, councillors come from a wide variety of backgrounds. They have different things going on in their lives. A lot of councillors in this particular group of councillors do have other work commitments. This is, after all, a part-time job. So I really do welcome the cognizance that's being taken of that, and hope that we can manage to get a programme for development that can allow as many as possible people to participate in it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think I just really echo what Councillor Braze has just said really there. It's encouraging to see this has been put together, and the flexibility that convener, you mentioned on all of this, because we have so many things during the daytime that pull us away from all of this, and when we have to attend meetings, briefings, all sorts of things during the working day as well, to have additional training and things slotted into that's the most difficult thing to attend as well. So the fact it's flexible and can be accessed out with hours and things is a very welcome addition. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. I believe that we provide that flexibility. Okay, do we have any further comments? No. Can I ask if we approve the strategy? Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, next we move on to item 6, the change programme update, and for us to consider the progress report with regard to the change programme. I'd like to invite Vivian Smith to comment on the report.
Thanks, convener. And this report really is based on the change programme that was agreed at the budget setting process. We had done a fair bit of a review of our change programme following COVID, and it was important to do that to make sure that it was as deliverable as it could be. This is the first time we're now reporting this. We do report it on a quarterly basis. What I would draw members' attention to is the fact that we have roughly around 75% of the programme identified at the 6-month juncture, which is quite a good place to be. There are a couple of projects that are slipping into amber and red, but those are being managed by our council leadership team. And we have managed to also accelerate a number of projects as well into the current year, which is also a positive place to be. However, I would highlight that there is an ongoing challenge and gap that needs to be filled, and we'd like to assure members that we are working very hard to try to bring forward opportunities and proposals both for savings and income growth through the budget setting process this year. Happy to take any questions, convener.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the update. And I commend everyone involved on the progress made today, whilst acknowledging the challenges that we do face. I'll ask for questions now, and I see Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yes, I too wanted to note the excellent progress that's been made, and thanks to Vivian Smith and all those that have been involved. I just wanted maybe to ask one sort of general question, which was whether how confident we were that the remaining part of the change programme for this year would be achieved. And I had a specific question on page 26, which is to hear a little bit more about the blue-green drainage project, which is being linked to Tay City Deal.
For yourself, Convener.
Sure.
Councillor Duff, I think you know, the report highlights the projects that are now moving into amber and red in the table at 410. It shows the projects. There's one at 50k in the amber column and one at 60k in the red high column. So those are the projects that are most at risk at this point in the year. So the level of confidence is it's looking reasonably good for this year, I would say. Clearly, in terms of percentage terms, there was a bit of a dip in the overall delivery of the programme last year. However, I'm hoping now that we're coming through into a recovery phase from COVID as opposed to a response phase, that we will be able to focus on and deliver the projects that are there in the current year. I think in terms of page 26, you were asking a question. Sorry, could you remind me about Tay City Steel?
You're on mute, Councillor Duff.
Yeah, apologies. Yeah, it's at page 26. It's 7.2.3. It's the Project Officer Montrose Strategic Blue-Green Drainage Strategy. Just wanted to hear a little bit about that, and maybe I'd make a comment.
Yes, I'm wondering if Alison Smith is on the call and would be able to give you more of an update on the progress with that particular officer.
Yes, happy to take that. We can provide a bit more fuller update on that one. This is a project, say, we had proposed to actually take on an officer to deliver this. There has been a bit of a shift around that, and we're currently looking at other funding options as well related to that work. It's something that we're working across the teams between planning and also the roads infrastructure team. So there has been a little bit of shift just recently around that project. So I'm happy to share a fuller update after the meeting, just exactly where we are with that one.
Yeah, thanks very much. That would be good to hear. And I mean, my understanding is some of the sort of systemic flooding problems we've had in Montrose for, I'm frightened to say 40 years. And I think that is the situation, and yes, it's certainly good that we're picking up and appointing somebody in a sort of a consultancy basis to give us some advice here. I know Scottish Water are heavily engaged in trying to sort this problem out. They have come up with some more solutions, but a little bit of help from the council side I think is really welcome, and I'm really quite excited about this and pleased that we've been able to come this far. And it sounds like we've just got to do about the financing options. But I'd appreciate an update, Alison. Thank you.
Yes, happy to do that. And it obviously ties into that wider piece where we're looking at in terms of development around Montrose. So I'll come back with that fuller update.
Thanks very much. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. It was under the service design in the table and the red-grad status, improving access to our services for our communities. I just wondered if I could have a bit of an update on that. And just
Vivian, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Convener and Councillor Speed. This is one that has been an ongoing piece of work in terms of looking at how our customer services are delivered. It was a piece of work that was done through with the Ignite consultancy, and it's an ongoing piece of work, Councillor Speed. So there isn't a kind of finalised position about what the options might be for different models of provision. Clearly, there's a look at what needs to be face-to-face, what needs to be delivered digitally in the future, and those kinds of things. But because it was delayed beyond the Ignite contract, that's why it has gone to a red status in the table. However, I would assure you that the work is still ongoing, and we will bring it forward just as soon as we can.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll look forward to hearing more detail on that going forward. Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, it was just if you have any more detail in terms of that timescale that you'd be working to bring something back.
It's actually Duncan Lean who is heading up the project there, and I'm happy to get in touch with him, Councillor Speed, and ask him to contact you directly if that's helpful.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. Does anyone have a comment? Is that in your hands, Councillor Speed? No. Okay. Okay, thank you. We are then asked to agree to consider and to scrutinise the update. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, next report is number 7, the Common Good Register, and I'd like to ask Mrs. Buchanan if she wants to say anything on this, which is obviously a complex area.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, that would be helpful just to go through a bit of the detail in relation to the report. The report provides an update on the Common Good Register and our progress in connection with that. You'll be aware there's obviously a statutory obligation to have a Common Good Register really for all our property assets throughout Angus. Now, as the report outlines, there's been a few difficulties in progressing with the consultation on the Common Good Register for Arbroath. As an aid memoir, we've narrated in the report the recommendations that went to PNR last year in June. And because of various reasons as outlined in paragraph 4, it's not been possible to publish, unfortunately, the list of properties to be included in the Common Good Register. The Arbroath list, although we'd started to do it, we've had issues in terms of the COVID pandemic. That's relevant not simply in relation to the focus of our priorities, but also because we couldn't get access to archives during quite a lot of that, to do that in order to properly assess and provide the final detail, because it's not just a case of looking at the title deeds, it's also looking at historical title deeds which are stored there, and supplementary research into old minutes and other archived information. We also had significant issues last year with capacity within legal. There was a big turnover in staff for various reasons, I think, and that took some time to resolve. And the nature, as you've said yourself, Convener, it's quite a specialist and technical area, and you really need to have legal staff that have experience in dealing with common good in order to provide that support. And we were just unsuccessful in recruiting. What we have done since then, though, is we've managed to backfill some other work, and we've got someone who's actually very experienced in common good that is delighted to take on this work for us. And paragraph 5 explains that we've already started doing work on the Arbroath list, and that will be progress now, and we'll ensure that it's published no later than December 2022. And in accordance with the Scottish Government guidance on that, we'll then consult for a period of 12 weeks and be in a position to respond to any questions or inquiries that come in. And Our report will then be brought to committee seeking approval just to publish that list, and we'll continue with the other areas within Angus going forward from that. So happy to take any questions, but really it's a case of just getting on with that now and coming back to committee in advance of coming back, making sure that we do the public consultation.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, and thank you very much for that, Jackie. Do you have a sense of any common good properties that we might have that maybe have title deeds missing? And I wondered, under the financial implications, what sort of legal process that might entail, and any cost attached to that. Should we have gaps in our title deed provision in the archive? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Bell, for your question. Hopefully we don't have gaps in our title deeds. There may be the odd one missing here and there. If it is, it's not too expensive, generally speaking, to record. You can get a copy from the land register, or probably a SAZIN if it's an older title. So you can get copies of those. And then we would need to really do that anyway, because we should have copies of our title, and they won't really know, because what happens is one person that's doing it, so they'll look at each title individually and assess if it's there or not. I think some previous work's been done, so I'm hoping that that's not an issue. So hopefully not too much of an expense and too much of an issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, convener. Yeah, just about the process. So we're concentrating on Arbroath. We're drawing up a list of common good properties in Arbroath. And then it will go out for a 12-week consultation period. Will we be moving directly from Arbroath to start work on another borough's common good as soon as we've finished Arbroath? Or do we wait until the consultations period's over and before we go to the next borough?
I think we'd be able to do it concurrently, Councillor Brays, because I don't suspect that the queries, well, I shouldn't tempt fate here, but I don't think that it would be full time in responding to them. So just as resources required, we'll do what's needed to be done, but certainly the plan is to keep going and not to have a period of delay if resources are available to progress with the next borough area.
That's great, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Fairweather.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, just quickly. Obviously, I fully understand the problems with what happened with COVID, and I know that we have had problems with staff shortages. It's just a quick question to Mrs. Buchanan. Are you confident this can be published in the said timeline?
Yes, I am.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darnall.
Mine's is more of a comment, convener, if that's okay.
I don't see any more hands, so on you go.
I just want to welcome this report taking place, and I wish Jackie Buchanan all the luck in the world to get this done, because I do remember an MSP, Andy Whiteman, attempting to do the common good over Scotland, and he actually wrote a book about it, and I think at the end he said it was a minefield, and I don't think he managed to get to the bottom of all the common goods. So I wish you well, and I look forward to the report when it comes back to see how interesting it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've actually got a question myself, Mrs. Buchanan. As for, you mentioned having trouble accessing some of the archives because of COVID. I'm just wondering, as we go through the process and we come across paper archives, are these being digitised as we need them for the future?
That's a very good question, convener. And what we actually did during COVID is we managed to secure funding to bring in a legal assistant to digitise, in effect, our documentation so that it would be accessible, available online for our lawyers, so we wouldn't have this gap again going forward. So yes, that's the plan, and we'll just see how much of a resource issue that is, but the plan is to get someone in to do that for us.
Perfect, thanks very much. Any more comments? No, do we agree to note this report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Move on to item number 8, the procurement update. And again, this is Mrs. Buchanan. Would you like to talk to this report?
Yes, thank you, convener. The report covers quite a few areas in terms of procurement, so I'll just go through them briefly for you. So the first part of it is in terms of the resourcing matters we're looking at, including efficiency changes in terms of TPC, which is Tayside Procurement Consortium. So in relation to looking at our spend, we've looking at 3 aspects of that are going to assist in terms of ensuring that we're effective and as efficient as possible. Those are detailed in 4.1 of the report. So it's education in terms of staff being aware of what can be done in order to ensure that spend is proportionate and relevant in terms of whatever aspect of spend they're involved with. We're providing support to ensure the Council's development procurement model can operate efficiently through provisions of appropriate support material, templates and updates, so best practice in terms of that side of things, and ensuring that the quality of procurement activity is improved by education and support directly with the services, and that's going to be enabled through the central corporate procurement team. As part of that, we also plan to have a separate set of contract standing orders out with the financial regs, which I think it will make it easier for people to understand and access what the rules are regarding contract spend. Members may recall in September last year, we brought a report and asked for funding for an LG6. And what we propose to do is use the funding to still have the LG6, but the LG6 will be looking at more analysing data and that's in effect to ensure that we rationalise our spend as much as possible and ensuring that we have the correct spend data available to analyse. And that will assist with the requirements of the role going forward. So it will in effect be predominantly data focused. The other aspect I mentioned was in terms of the TPC, the Tayside Procurement Consortium, and through vacancies that have arisen there, we've got a more, I would say, streamlined approach to joint procurement with the other local authorities in Tayside. We don't have a manager's post separately for that now, so each of the separate teams within Tayside will themselves manage the joint procurements, and it will become a modus operandi, really, the way that all the team work in Angus. So they will consider in each procurement if it would be more appropriate to do it on a Tayside basis, and they will all therefore be involved in that, and that will bring in savings in terms of the staff costs. And I think it will also embed a more Tayside approach to the way in which we do procurement, and that's the TPC rules and agreement is going to be refreshed to allow that to happen. The last part to note is in terms of the procurement report, which we consulted with the convener as leader of the council and also with the leader of the opposition, and submitted that to Scottish Government, and that report will also be circulated to all members of P&R. And the last thing just to add, you'll see there's a community benefits officer. Again, we had funding for that, and we're going ahead to recruit to that also. So I have the procurement manager in the meeting if there's any further questions you'd like to ask in terms of the detail.
Thanks very much for that, Jackie, and I certainly welcome this report. I'm sure all members will agree there's never been a more important time to have a very efficient and an effective procurement service within the council. Any questions? Councillor Cheek.
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's really just I noted the report, Jackie, and unless it was concerned about the removal of the 85,000 cost from TPC and that we're replacing that with 2 officers on our own council here, but it's just more to get a gut feel that this will bring about better value for money. That's really what we're looking for here, is better value for money and efficiencies in our spending, and just whether you believe that going down this route is the best method for doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. I'll ask Alison Gallagher to come in. She's the procurement manager and she's been leading on this work. So I think she'd be best placed to respond to your question.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jackie. The TPC model previously, as Jackie indicated, had a central manager looking after the role of the TPC, the work the TPC were focusing on. Since that post has been vacant, there's potentially been a lack of direction within the TPC, and by bringing those roles within the individual councils' corporate teams, there's going to be more direction and more focus on the work undertaken by the TPC, and I use that as a collaborative badge, but as Jackie was mentioning there, collaboration should really be at the heart of everything we're doing anyway and become more of a generic focus within procurement. So by having the TPC badge, if we can put it that way, the TPC work within the core procurement team, we've got that greater control and greater focus of the work being undertaken, so we can make sure it's meaningful to where those efficiencies and savings can hopefully be harnessed. And it all leads back to the data post that Jackie mentioned also. I think this is an area that's going to be a real benefit within Angus to analyse the spend data that's going through to see where there's potential rationalisation across suppliers, to see what spend's going out at the moment, really to get a harness on who's spending what with where on what. There's potentially Maverick, I say potential, we don't know, we need the data to get the information to start with, but that's going to be the core to become a more intelligence-led service and utilise resource that this restructure within the TPC is actually going to afford to us. And I genuinely believe this is going to be for the benefit of Angus to get that closer control with a more structured approach to what it is we're targeting, so we know what we're going to market for with a realistic approach to what we can achieve from it. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Any more questions? No. Does anyone have a comment? No. Well, we're asked to note the report. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Next is item 9, the Rural Community-Led Local Development Funding report. This report is prepared by Vivian Smith and Alison Smith. Would somebody like to introduce it?
Thanks, convener. I'm happy to pick it up initially, and then Alison may want to come in as well. This report is really the replacement for what was leader funding previously, and is now about community-led funding. But members may be aware that a lot of the leader programme was based on community development and input as well at the time, and this kind of continues this emphasis of community engagement and development about the how resources are distributed within rural communities in Angus. Happy to say that there's just around £290,000 that has been awarded to the rural areas and for that community-led approach to take place. And we were involved, Angus Council that is, were involved in supporting the local group to be established, and we also worked with the Five Glens consultancy to help them get established to be able to take on the role of distributing the money. The group has applied for charity status, but that hasn't actually come through as yet. So Scottish Government has asked Angus Council to continue to provide that accountable body status for, to enable the money to come through and for us to sign that off and for that to be paid for. Part of the agreement that we've put in place is for Alison to become a member of the Rural Partnership. So with your permission, convener, I'll hand over to Alison.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. Yeah, just really to add, I mean, the model that we have here of community-led local development has long been hailed as a successful model, and hopefully many of you will recall the success we had through our local action group model, so public, private and third sector working together to administer a programme and deliver funding to projects and support them. This is a positive step in terms of setting up an independent body as opposed to the council running and managing that programme, which is where we were before, and re-establishing an Angus Rural Partnership, bringing together the different sectors is a really positive step forward for community development in Angus.
Thank you, and I'll go to questions now. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, and I very much welcome this paper, both Vivian and Alison. I know how much we missed the leader funding as a result of Brexit. Really good to see an opportunity to continue the good work from that grassroots level. I was going to ask about the process of identifying the consultancy company to be part of this, but from what you're saying, Vivian, it obviously predates my time. It was a startup that was able to get off the ground on the back of that funding, which is obviously helpful for, economic development and growing self-employment in the county. I just wondered if you could tell me a bit more about that, and were there any other startups like that, or is that something that is on the cards with the new setup? Thank you.
So the consultancy, Councillor Bell, was in part of a quick quote arrangement that we put in place, and the consultants who came forward did have a good knowledge and understanding of rural Angus, and that was why they were appointed. The intention would be to continue with that support for the group, because I think they have some more work to do to become established as a group, as well as identify how the resources will be spent and distributed on which particular projects might come forward. But Alison may have more detail on that.
Yeah, no, just to add to that, that's right. So in terms of that establishment of the group, the Five Glens Consultancy was the appointed consultant to work with them and to become a group, to set up and to deliver the first tranches of funding that were available. The plan would be, as we move into the establishment of the new partnership, potentially there could be, if funding's found, there could be more staff appointed who would, perhaps in sort of the project coordinator, the animator roles that we had previously. It would really be funding dependent around some of that. But they'll continue this time until such time the group is established and the new structure comes into place, and actually having the rural partnership.
Thank you, Alison. I don't see any more questions. Does anyone have a comment? No comments? Okay, we're asked to note the successful bid, approve Angus Council acting as an accountable body, and to delegate authority to accept the grant offer. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. Next report is number 10, the preparation of the 23-24 General Fund Revenue and Capital Budgets. And this looks at the strategy, the timeline, and the revised arrangements for PBSG. So I'd like to ask Mr. Lorimer if he'd like to update us on this report.
Thank you very much, Convener, and good afternoon, members of the committee. Yes, as you say, Convener, the purpose of this report is to get approval, hopefully, of the strategy and the approach to the budget. It doesn't seem that long since we put to bed the 22-23 budget, and indeed it's not quite all the way there yet in terms of some aspects of it. But yeah, we need to start on next year. The strategy, the timeline, the broad approach, etc., that's set out in this report is very much similar to previous years, all geared towards late February, early March, setting the 23-24 budgets, including the council tax. As you mentioned, Convener, there's proposals to make some amendments to the way that the Policy and Budget Strategy Group operates that have been set out within the report, which we hope are going to be helpful in terms of the use of both member and officer time. We are also looking to, there's only a very brief paragraph within the report, but it is quite a significant one, looking to change and streamline both the process and the reporting for the preparation of the revenue budget in particular. Conscious that for budget setting day is a very large volume of papers that members are asked to consider in a short period of time, and we want to try and present that information in a different way that hopefully makes it more digestible and less for everybody involved, including elected members, scrutinising and reviewing that work. So that's another change from last year, convener. But by and large, the timeline and the approach would be similar to what we've done in previous years. And that's all I really wanted to say in terms of introduction. Happy to take any questions on it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ian, and I think we all appreciate all the work that goes into this every year, and if we can streamline it in any way, that'll be very welcome, and appreciate the cooperation of members across the Council in agreeing to the revised PBSG structure. Does anyone have any questions? No questions, comments? No. Do we agree with the report?
Agreed.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I've got a hand from Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, I was just wanting to welcome the paper. It's good to see the timeline. As Mr. Lorimer has said, we have now moved to a one-track PBSG rather than two, which obviously saves in terms of officer time, and it was something that we promised when we were in opposition that we would revert to that process. I'm pleased to see the sort of process changes that Mr. Lorimer is talking about, and certainly anything that can reduce the number of 400-page reports would be very welcome. So yeah, I'm welcoming it, and I'm pleased that all members of the council have agreed that a streamlined PBSG should be set up, and we've had our first meeting. I think that went relatively well.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Is the report approved?
Agreed.
Okay. Mr. Lorimer isn't off the hook. Next one is report number 11, final revenue budget documents. This report is for noting, but perhaps you'd like to give us an update, Mr. Lorimer.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Very, very briefly, as I mentioned, the 22-23 budget, the current year's budget's not quite all the way finished yet. There are some issues still obviously ongoing. Some of them very high profile in relation to pay negotiations for the current financial year. But we can't wait for those to conclude to finalise, at least for now, service budgets for 22-23. So this report's really just given a little bit of an update on the changes to largely government grant position, actually, from the budget that was set in March, and seeking agreement to publish what we call the final revenue budget volume document. There's a link to that. And that then sets the budgets for each service to monitor against over the course of the year. There are some things that will need to be adjusted within those budgets once the pay deal is eventually agreed, once energy and maintenance budgets are finally established, all within the same envelope the same budget envelope that was agreed back in March. So we're not changing the kind of totality of the budget. It's really just breaking that down into service areas. So once all of that's worked through, there will be some further adjustments to be made, but we'll bring those back for agreement to this committee once we're in a position to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's certainly a challenging environment at the moment. Any questions on this report? No, any comments? No comments. The report is for noting. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And back to Mr. Lorimer again. The final capital budget general fund report 22722. Would you like to update us on this one?
Yeah, thanks again, Convener. Yeah, this report deals with the 22-23 capital budget, similar to the last report in relation to revenue. Council agreed a 22-23 capital budget back in March. But what we do each year is we update that in light of where capital projects actually got to at the end of the financial year. And we adjust the budget or update the budget on the basis of that. We've also this year reviewed the budget in relation to the implications of supply chain issues, inflation, and those type of things. So this is our best estimate within this report as to what we expect our capital budget and our capital projects to happen in terms of cost and in terms of phasing over the rest of the year. Subject to the committee's agreement, if the report and the appendix is agreed, that would then form the updated capital budgets for all of those projects and for all of those services for the remainder of the financial year. And that's what we would then monitor to, and we'll be bringing monitoring reports against that budget to this committee over the rest of the financial year. This report, and I have to apologise, the abstract in this report is missing a few words. Recommendations and all that are fine. But its recommendation B in relation to the Lochside Leisure Centre demolition project, the abstract should say that there's a request for to approve additional funding for that project in this report. The reasons for that are set out within, I think it's section 6 of the report. So we're not recommending that we use capital resources for that to meet that shortfall, but rather to use revenue resources. And that's really because we have uncommitted revenue resources available, and our capital budget is very much under pressure, as is set out within the report. So we're seeking agreement to the updated capital budget and that additional funding in relation to that particular project, Convener. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lormer. And of course, we'll all be aware of the inflationary pressures, and it's disappointing actually that the project that you mentioned, the Lochside Leisure Centre demolition, has been delayed so long, which has obviously contributed to the increase in the price of the tenders. However, we are where we are. Can I ask if there's any questions? Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, this is just a bit off the wall, but again, Ian, just out of interest, having just talked about procurement as well, and looking at this, that the contractors that were contacted were through the Scotland Excel demolition and deconstruction framework, which sounds fine. But bearing in mind it's come in at the cost it has, do we have any ability within the council to actually go out with those who have actually tendered to perhaps the companies that we know locally that may not have actually done this, and maybe negotiated with them for a price, another price perhaps, keeping it local? I know it sounds all very commercial, but that's how I think you might do. But rather than just stick with the Excel list and the 10 that's submitted, in the knowledge that the price has got £100,000 what we might have wanted, is it not worth a little bit of local negotiation?
Thank you.
Yeah, it might be. Sorry, Convener.
And on you go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it might be that we want to have an input from the procurement manager in relation to this. And Mr. Balfour's also on the call in case he wants to add to this. But we're a public authority, therefore what we do in terms of our procurement arrangements needs to be transparent and fair. We can choose different approaches to how we procure. I think in this instance we've used the Scotland Excel framework because there's a number of contractors on that framework. You can see that we had 10 responses, so that's a very good level of response and competition for this particular item. Using a framework also avoids us having to do a lot of effectively a bespoke procurement arrangement, a one-off. So we were keen to move forward with this particular project as quickly as possible, and the framework allows us to do that more quickly than if we'd done it as a bespoke arrangement. That's not to say that we couldn't have sought to, it had a general invite within the market for demolition contractors, as I say, as a bespoke procurement arrangement. But I think in this instance, the Scotland Excel framework is there, it's available, and it's also allowed us to progress the project more quickly. I'd pause there in case either Alison or Gavin would wish to say any more in relation to this particular procurement, either the specific procurement here or generally in terms of our approach to procurement. Councillor Cheap, to pick up the question that you've asked.
Mr. Lorimer and Councillor Cheap, just to come in, Ms Gallagher had left the meeting, but I just asked her to come back in. So if Ian, if you wouldn't mind just explaining the nature of the question to Alison so she can respond. You're probably more succinct than I am in terms of the detail.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mr Buchanan. Yes, so I suppose I'm in the position here of trying to repeat what your question was, Councillor Cheap. So if I don't...
To repeat it for Alison myself, it's just to save you, Ian, but it was just applying a bit of commercial to this, Alison, I realise that we've used the Scotland Excel framework, the demolition and deconstruction part of that, and it's come in with a good number of people or businesses tendering, but in the knowledge that it's come in significantly above what we have left in the pot for this project and our budget. The commercial side of me is an accountant says, why doesn't somebody pick up the phone for the show and contact one or two local companies and say and offer them the opportunity if they haven't already tendered through the Scotland Excel. They may not be on that, but give them the opportunity and see if we can get the price down. I don't think it's not a big job to actually do that in a short time, just to actually opportunity. I know it probably goes against the way the council operates, but I'm just thinking commerciality. That's what I would do.
Thank you. No, I appreciate where you're coming from with this. There's a sort of common sense approach when it comes down to the pound, shilling and pence versus the fact that we have the black and white of a piece of paper that says here's a framework and here's the route we should be using. The Scotland Excel frameworks should, in theory, be providing best value for us on the basis that we have provided appropriate input when they're being constructed in terms of specifications, and we've undertaken our role in making sure the local supply base are participating in those frameworks to go on in the first place. That may be an issue with the current framework, and that's certainly something I want to address going forward. But for this particular project, I'm not familiar with the actual details around it or the specifics of the values on it. But if we're talking about something that is potentially below 50,000, would that be an area we're looking at? No, okay. We do have, as you're well aware, as national legislation, demolition falls under the category of works. So from a national perspective, out with internal regs, the values are greater. We do have more flexibility in how we deal with things. I wouldn't be willing to open discussions with a local contractor trying to barter anybody down or use rates that we currently know of as stalking horses. I think that's unethical from that perspective. But if we've done a procurement via a compliant route, assuming it's a mini competition via Scotland Excel, and that has come to a conclusion that we do not have confidence is delivering best value, then no, I would not be advocating we award via that process. I'd be looking to cancel that process, look to an alternative route. We may have to get dispensation from the council to set aside internal regulations, and at that point it'd be looking at, okay, is there a local supply base, a local supply chain that can deliver this? Can we look to enter into direct negotiations with a contractor? If we're confident that value is not being delivered, I think that's the key thing here. But what is it that's giving us that confidence? Has there been any market testing, or have we got any benchmarking that tells us that the Scotland Excel rates are not delivering value for money? I'd be looking for an exercise to be undertaken in that way first. But yes, absolutely, I would not be looking to sign off on Scotland Excel just because we followed a process for the sake of it. We are looking for value for money. There are various routes and means we can go down with that one, so perhaps that's something for myself and Mr Balfour to take forward separately out with this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's interesting and maybe something to look into going forward. Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, it is something that we perhaps should be looking to take forward. I was racking my brains here. This was an awful long process, and how did that process take so long? Well, first of all, we had two individuals who took Angus Council to court. I can't remember how long that took, but it was well over a year, and took into probably into 2 years. Then we had particular members who did want to keep it open. I always knew what my stance was, and I remember with you now, convener, a number of conversations we had regarding deputations, etc., etc. But I do remember one of those individuals who actually said he could demolish Forfar Leisure Centre if that was what it was to come down to for 100k. Okay, the market has gone up, but if you could even do it double that, how much would that be saving Angus Council? So perhaps we should be looking at going back to that individual and finding a way to go back to that individual to say what could he do it for now. That's my comments finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fair. I've got Mr. Balfour. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Whiteside. It was just to give some assurance really on the Scotland Excel framework. The documents, the 16 contractors, we had 10 contractors come back, which is a very good return. All the figures, all the costs were within a certain cost envelope, so we are convinced that the figures are realistic and what the market is, what's costing at the moment, particularly given the fuel crisis and things like that are ongoing. So yeah, we also, when the framework was being put together, we wrote to all the demolition contractors in the local area, asking them to get on the tender, get on the framework. So I think we did our due diligence there as well in terms of our local contractors.
Okay, thanks for that, Gavin. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Really just a comment on this one. I do have a question on later on in the report, and apologies, I lost connection for several minutes there. So yeah, I mean, I think just going to the Lochside Leisure Centre, I think Mr. Balfour's described the process. 10 tenders out of 16 looks pretty thorough to me. Councillor Fairweather has described the long delays this saga has undergone. The original costs for demolition were come up with quite a number of years ago, and it's unfortunately the case that delay here has cost us money, and that's just that's life, I guess. But I do have a question about something else once we've dealt with this one. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands, so if you'd like to go ahead with your next question. Yeah, thanks, convener. This question is about going from sublime to ridiculous. This is about play parks. Just a query. There are two items on the capital plan, 21-22, 108,000 and 22-23, 111,000 as proposed spendings. Now, I've got the motion from March of this year in front of me, and we had agreed to spend £250,000 in investment in Brecon, Forfar and Letham. And I think some eagle-eyed member of our group has spotted that doesn't seem to appear. Has that particular capital investment been because of other capital projects, or is that still extant? I think that's the question I'm asking. Thank you, Mr. Lormer.
Yeah, thank you, convener. I think the two references within the papers, it's on pages 68 and 69 of the combined papers. There's renewal of play parks 21-22 and renewal of play parks 22-23. I think that is the specific funding, additional funding from Scottish Government in relation to the renewal of play parks. I think there's a 60 million national funding for that over I think it's a five-year period. The 200, did you say 200 or 250, Councillor Duff? I think
that's the figure I've got off the budget papers, yeah.
That related to the place-based funding, which I think is a separate stream of funding. Those projects, and I might ask the Director of Vibrant Communities to come in on this, but those projects are still going ahead as far as I know. They're just funded through that separate route. And not reflected within the capital plan as because of that funding route. But Alison may be able to provide a bit of an update on that.
Yes, I've actually got Mr. Robertson here who will give you an update on the play park situation. Kevin is here.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Sorry, the first part of that, Ian, was 100% correct. The 111,000 are the Scottish Government replacement funding. Now, the 250,000, I think that Councillor Duff's referring to, Ian, is monies that was put into the budget by Councillor Salmond when he was finance convener. There was 100,000 put in for a contribution towards a destination play area in Forfar, 100,000 put towards a destination play area in Brechin, and 50,000 towards contribution towards one in Letham. And I think the reason these sums aren't shown, Councillor Duff, is we've deferred these payments because we need to find additional funding for the Brechin and Forfar projects. So they've been put back in the capital plan, I think, by 1 or 2 years, Ian. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Kevin. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands for questions. Does anyone have a comment? No comments. Is the report?
Read.
Thank you. Okay, item 13, the possible exclusion of public and press. The committee is asked to consider in terms of Standing Order 28.2 whether the public and press should be excluded during consideration of the following items, so as to avoid the disclosure of information which is exempt in terms of Part 1 of Schedule 7A to the Local Government Scotland Act. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll move on.